of Zimbabwe for many organizations, and I am head of academics of Lusitania Primary School in Zimbabwe. I'm here to talk about women's rights, and we all know that women are entitled to enjoy the same human rights like any other individual, and women's rights are human rights. Everyone who lives on this planet, on Mother Earth, they have got their rights. Women also have the right to live. We are living in a harsh environment. How many times have we heard that, or have we read that women have been raped, women have been killed, women have committed suicide? Do we ever ask ourselves why or why? So the rights of women are those that they are entitled and claimed for women and girls all over the world. Their rights can be institutionalized or they can be supported by different laws in different states. Women have got the right to live free from violence, to live free from discrimination, and they are entitled to enjoy the highest and physical or mental health. Women have the right to education. They have the right to own property. They have the right to vote. They have the right to earn an equal wage. They have the right, sexual and reproductive rights without discrimination. As Agnes Gamad says, there can be no excuses for failing to govern justly and fairly for women and girls. And each and every day we read, we hear in different countries, some cultural practices impact negatively on the rights of women. They infringe human rights. Let's take, for example, inheritance. In my culture, if a father or a male person dies and leaves children behind, a girl child cannot inherit her father's properties. But a girl child and a male child are the children of this man, but because of culture, a girl is not an heir to the property of the person whom he says is the father. If the father had a title, for example, if the father was a headman, if the father was a chief, it is very rare in my culture for a child to be given that title, for a girl child or a woman to be called a headman, or you can even tell by the gender title, headman. It doesn't account for women. So this results in men going out after marrying, and they discover that the woman is giving birth to females or girl children. The men are forced out to go out and impregnate other women in the community so that they can get a male child, a son, who can be the heir. Some of our mothers have even gone to the extent of being kicked out of their homes because they've failed to give birth to a male child. We are infringing the right to own property as a girl child or as a woman. Number two, health. When you're looking at health, if a woman in my culture falls ill and the husband tries to take the wife for medical treatment and it fails, they take that woman back to her parents' home so that they can take care of the illness. But this is a married woman. We are infringing the right to health. It's a discriminatory practice. Then number three, the dowry price. A man in my culture pays a bride price. It in US to the parents of the future wife. He pays in cash and also in cattle, maybe 7 cattle and so on. So the men then, after paying the dowry, they would then see the woman as personal property. And eventually, women do not have any voice to say anything in the house. This is infringing the right to be heard, the right to make decisions. Then, looking at number 4, initiation of girls. It happens in different parts of the world, especially in Africa. When girls reach a certain age, they are initiated into marriage. This makes our girls young as 10, 11, 12. As soon as they reach puberty, they are initiated. This exposes our children into getting into early marriage. Why? Because now they are sexually active because of the initiation. It also puts an increase in child marriages. They are forced into child marriages, early pregnancies, and then eventually they drop out of school. If they are not married, then they can resort to child prostitution. Number 5, female genital mutation. They normally call it the rites of passage or the coming of age of a female child. So this is also called female circumcision. There's surgical removal of parts of female genital organs. They do this, some people say, to control her sexually. So this is an infringement to the health because it results in health complications, let alone the trauma, psychological trauma that the girl children go through. It violates the right of enjoyment of highest attainable standards of health, which is Article number 24, paragraph 1 and 3 of the Convention of the Rights of the Children. Number 6, child marriage or marriage by abduction. There are different types of marriage in my country. There's something that they call marriage by abduction, whereby a boy can just come and abduct a girl child, and they can get married. This is practiced by different ethnic groups. Children as young as 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years are being forced into marriage. Why forcing? These are still children being forced into marriage. Why are they forcing the children into marriage? Sometimes it is due to poverty of the parents. They do not have food to put on the table. Then they force their children to get into marriage, and they get the dowry, the bride price. Also, due to religion, we've got some religious sects whereby when a child is just reached puberty, and there are some reach puberty as early as 9, some as early as 10, and some later, and they are partnered to a man in the religious sect, as old as their father, as old as their grandfather. So child marriage, we should know that child marriage robs a girl of a childhood time, and early marriage devalues women. There's also a practice that is done that devalues women. Sometimes our parents, in our culture, in different ethnic groups, girls go for virginity testing. Why? Why should they be subjected to that trauma at such an early age? So these are some of the practices that are done that infringe on women's rights. And then women and girls around the globe, they still face discriminatory practices based on sexual orientation, based on gender identity, based on pregnancy. Because sometimes when you're pregnant, some employers won't even employ you because they say it's expensive to employ someone who's pregnant who can go for maternity. So we still face a lot of gender disparities due to sexual orientation, e.g. in our communities and in our workplaces. There are some jobs you really get, You rarely get employed for because you have stated in your CV that you are a woman. When I was growing up, we were made to think that a woman's place is in the home. We were made to think that there are certain jobs that are for women, like nursing and teaching, maybe office jobs. But jobs like being an engineer, being a mechanic, being a driver, train driver, being a pilot, we were taught that they were for men. Sexual orientation is important. Then we are still living also in a world full of sexual discrimination, where persistent gaps are still there in cases, for example, access to opportunities, in getting involved in decision-making. Gender bias still exists in our communities. For example, in decision-making in my community, when we go there in the rural areas, men sit outside by the fireplace making decisions, whilst we women are in the house and we are cooking. So we still face those gender disparities, and we still face gender pay gaps are still there, whether you are a woman or a man doing the same job, but with different pay packets that you take home. So women still face too many inhibiting restrictions. For example, you can't dress like that if you're a woman. You can't walk like that if you're a woman. You can't talk like that as a girl child or a woman. We are still being treated differently from the other sex based on gender. So we still have some issues that need to be taken care of, stereotypes. And these vary from culture to culture. In my culture, going to the rural areas, dressed up in trousers as a lady, we're having makeup, long nails. You come back there with a string of titles. You are deemed to be loose because you're putting on your trousers. Who says that? And you may be categorized as a prostitute. So stereotyping also still contributes to violation of women's rights. And it starts in our homes. The moment we say that this color is not for boys, this color is not for girls, these chores are not for boys, these chores, that's where stereotyping starts from. And it moves on to infringement of women's rights. Think of the gender-based chores. Women or girls are expected to do the household chores. They are expected to carry the brunt of taking care of children. And a woman's place is in the home. According to our cultures, certain cultures, some women are not even allowed to leave their homes alone or go to work, let alone go to shops without accompaniment of the husband or the man. When it comes to decision-making, women are rarely consulted. In certain cultures, my culture, for example, like I said, when we go to the rural areas, when we go there, men sit outside on a big fireplace, making decisions whilst women are cooking. That's where all decisions are made, that so-and-so has to get married, or partner marriages or arranged marriages. And as a woman, when you wake up in the morning, that's when you are told that, oh, your girl is going to join this family. We have this culture we have this certain culture whereby if my aunt, my father's sister gets married and does not have children in that marriage, I, as a girl child, I am taken from my home to go and bear children for that man. It's me, a child, 9, 10 years. They will take you there until you are a certain age, then you can bear children. Or then I am taken also as a girl child to go into that family to bear children. Or if my father or grandfather or anyone from my clan commits homicide or kills someone from another family, I am taken there to appease the spirit as a girl child, to go and get married into that family so that we appease the spirit. So those are some of the cultural practices that infringe on women's rights. In some schools and from home, Some girl children are not given the rights to choose subjects. They are not given the rights to choose careers. They are not given the right to choose their partners. In some communities, you hear statements such as, boys don't cry. Don't they have emotions just like girls? Or don't talk like that. Girls don't talk like that. That is why they bottle in their emotions and do not come out in the open. In marriages, even if there's domestic violence, our moms used to tell us that don't cry out to the world. So when you go there and cry out to them, they'll definitely say, my daughter, please linger on, be patient. Your husband is going to change. So that is why there are so many increases in suicides, because our voices are not being heard. There are so many cases of homicides or killings, because sometimes you can't take those emotions and you end up doing something that is very, that can take the life of someone. That's why there are so many abuses, because they know that you don't have any way to go and cry out. Because of this orientation, women's voices are kept low. Victims are afraid of social exclusion that might take place. Sometimes you hear that, like I said, that don't walk like that, don't talk like that. This is the type of socialization that we are giving our children that we should stop. Boys and girls should be equal. Sometimes this leads also to infringement of women's rights. In ownership of property, statistics show that 50% of the world's population, only 1% of women own the world's wealth. Despite women performing long hours of unpaid domestic work, women still lack the right to own land in some countries. I cannot go right now in the rural areas and say that I need property. They'll start to look at where are you coming from? Do you have a husband or not? Women need to be empowered in order for them to enjoy their rights. There is need to foster in them a sense of self-worth and decision-making. They also need access to opportunities and to resources. They need power to control over their own life inside and outside the home. They need to be change makers wherever they are. They need to be change makers. And then women still are facing physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse. Forced and early marriage is another form of violence girls and women face. The fact that it is forced means there's no consent given. There are increases in sexual violence cases. Women and girls are being forced against their will. In my culture, it is taboo to hear women taking their men to court because of marital rape. But it is happening every second, every minute, every hour, every week, every month, and every year. Marital rape is happening. But due to our culture, due to the reason that I don't want to be excluded socially, I do not report. Women never have a say against it. The reason given by the men or communities that he paid a bride price for you. So there are so many things that are happening in our everyday lives whereby women's voices and choices are not being heard. For example, why do you have to arrange a marriage for your daughter? Why do you force that girl of yours, that child of yours, into early marriage? We know that healthy-wise, they shouldn't be into that marriage because it also affects them. Their cervix, their womb is not yet ready to carry the child, but we force them into early marriages. Also, why do we have early pregnancies? Who is impregnating the girl child? It's adults in our communities. It's adults in our country. And why is there female rape? Why are we forcing them? Why not get married? Why are women forced to bear so many children? I know one of my neighbors where I used to grow up with, that lady had 7 girl children, and the man was still forcing her to have more children. Why? Because he wanted a son. The first child was a son, and then that son was followed by 5 girls, and the last one, the 7th one, was a boy. So you know that when God has given you some children, we should be grateful. So the last child was a son. Now he had 2 sons and five daughters. But you know what happened later in life? One of the first son was playing outside and was killed by lightning. So he ended up back having that one son. So we should be grateful of the children whom we are given. So in my culture, you are expected to have boy children. And sometimes when a man and a woman meet, maybe they have there's early pregnancy and the boy does not want this pregnancy, we are also forced into abortion. Forced abortion, which we have not consented to. And I think it's proper for governments to make sure there's facilities for abortion. If I decide to abort on my own, I should be able to go into a facility where I can abort safely. So the risks of child marriages are many in terms of health. One, that child, like I said, is not yet ready to have a child. It increases on maternity mortality rates. 2, it means that child has dropped out of school. So it means that child does not now have access to education. 3, it means that that child who doesn't have a voice because she is still a minor can suffer from sexual violence wherever that child is going into early marriages. And they can also suffer other severe violations of human rights. If that child also is not, maybe has got a baby or kicked back or taken back to their parents' home, it can also give rise to child prostitution. Child prostitution is there, especially after COVID-19 struck 2 years, 2020 and 2021. There were so many cases of child prostitution. It wasn't because of the children's maybe wish to get into child prostitution, but because the parents were forced out of work. So the children had to be sent out to beg for money in the streets, and some ended up being child prostitutes. It was a sad affair, especially here in some places in Zimbabwe. And you could see that these children shouldn't be in the streets, but should be in school. And also, the other thing that is violating women's rights is human trafficking. It's happening each and every day of our lives, and most of those are women trafficking. Women trafficking is also women traffickers. Women trafficking is there. I know that I've read in the news, I've seen, read in the newspapers, seen in the TV of women who have been enticed to go to other countries because they cannot get any jobs or employment in their country, to go to other countries. And when they reach there, all those promises, they are just promises that you're going to get a job, but they end up being sexual slaves. I have seen so many of women being turned into sex slaves. So these are some of the issues that we need to work on, especially the issue that worries me each and every day is on child marriages. Just 2 weeks ago here in Zimbabwe, we had a child, I think she's 9 years old. She was pregnant, and the mother only discovered that that child was pregnant when she was almost 8 months and so. She didn't see in between that her child was pregnant, until when the child says, I've got a stomach ache. And when she was taken to the hospital, that's when they discovered that this girl, poor girl child, was pregnant. And who made her pregnant? They discovered that it was the dad, because the dad was telling her that each and every night you're going to hear some goblins are going to come. I think the dad was mentally preparing this child that when he goes into that room and rapes the child, she wouldn't worry. So these are infringement of women's rights by people whom we trust, people whom we call adults, people whom we call our fathers, people whom we call our grandfathers. So according to statistics from UNICEF, more than 700 women are married before the age of 18 years, around 250 million before the age of 15. It means that these girls' education would have been disturbed. We do have so many child brides in Africa alone, some forced into it by parents, religion, or poverty. These children suffer from discrimination, stereotyping, violence, abuse, and we end up having high maternity mortality rates. So it is my appeal that to everyone who is out there, that women should enjoy their rights just like their male counterparts. And what should we do as communities, as countries, and in our continents to help women enjoy their rights just like men?